Welcome to Kunzy Podcast English, where true stories help you not only learn English, but also connect with the deepest parts of your heart. Today's episode carries a title that speaks louder than words. I was terrified on my wedding night until he did this. It's not just a story. It's a moment many are too afraid to talk about. A night filled with fear, expectations, and uncertainty. But what happened next changed everything. This is not about perfect romance. It's about a quiet act of kindness that melted fear into trust. If you've ever wondered what love really looks like when no one is watching, stay with me. Because this story may shift the way you see love forever. My name is Emma, just an ordinary girl. Nothing special at all. I was born and raised in a small town called Maplewood, the kind of place where if you shout from one end of the street, someone at the other end will hear you. In Maplewood, everyone knows everyone. The baker knows what kind of bread you like. The mailman remembers your birthday. In the summer, you can smell freshly cut grass and warm pies drifting from open windows. It's a peaceful place. A place where life moves slowly and gently, like a quiet hug. I grew up with the tender care of my mother and the firm but loving guidance of my father. We weren't rich, but our home was always filled with laughter. I learned to sew from my mom, how to bake bread from my grandmother, and how to listen from the rain outside our window. I grew up with dreams. Not big ones about fame or fortune, just simple dreams about love. I dreamed of someone who would look at me with gentle eyes, hold my hand through hard days, someone who would make me feel like I was the only girl in the world. I truly believed that if I loved with all my heart, I would be loved the same in return. But even in those sweet dreams, there were shadows. A quiet fear always lingered. The fear of the unknown. A fear that didn't have a name, but people called it the wedding night. I didn't know what would happen that night. I had heard too many stories. Some girls said it was magical. Others said it was painful, confusing, even scary. Some cried. Some laughed. Some trembled in silence. And me, I had no idea which of those girls I would become. I remember whispering to my best friend, "Hey, is the first night scary?" She smiled, didn't say much, only replied, "It depends. Sometimes it's not the night itself. Sometimes it depends on the man." That one sentence stayed with me, because it's true. The man I was marrying was still a stranger in many ways. We had met only a few times before the wedding. Short conversations, polite smiles, nothing deep enough to understand who he really was. But in a small town like Maplewood, marriages aren't always built on years of love. Sometimes they begin with trust, tradition, and hope. I told myself, I'll be fine. Just smile and do your best. But as the wedding ended and night fell, a quiet storm began in my chest. My heart didn't beat like usual. It pounded, fast, loud, uncertain. I sat there wondering, would this night hurt me or heal me? Would it be a moment I'd want to forget or remember forever? And if you're still here, still listening to me now, I want to share this with you. Not just what happened, but how it happened. Because some moments in life aren't defined by action, but by emotion, by the look in someone's eyes, by a word spoken gently, by a hand held kindly. That's what changes everything. That's what turned one girl's fear into quiet peace. That's what turned a stranger into something more. And maybe, just maybe, that's what true love is. Not found in grand gestures, but in small, soft moments. So are you ready to step into that night with me? Because if you are, I'd like to tell you the rest. I can't remember exactly when I first heard the phrase wedding night. Maybe it was during a casual chat with my girlfriends after school. Maybe I saw it in a random video online with a dramatic title. Or maybe it was at my cousin's wedding when the adults whispered quietly about what happens after. But I do remember the very first feeling that came with it: fear. Not fear of something specific, but that strange, blurry kind of fear. Like standing in front of a closed door you're forced to open, with no one able to tell you what's on the other side. Some people say it's the most beautiful moment of a woman's life. Others say it's painful, awkward, even traumatic. Some shrug and say, it all depends on the man. And honestly, that made me even more afraid. You know what I did? I secretly read articles and watched countless videos, some real, some fake, about a girl's first night after marriage. I read stories that made my heart melt. Women who cried tears of joy because they felt loved, respected, safe. But I also came across stories that chilled me. Nights where women felt like objects, not humans. Nights they never wanted to remember. That's when I started wondering, which side of the story would I be on? I could imagine 1,000 scenarios, but none could prepare me for the truth. And the worst part about anything in life is the not knowing. I didn't know if it would hurt. I didn't know if he'd be gentle. I didn't know if I'd have the courage to say no if I wasn't ready. I remember attending a wedding once, sitting at a table with a woman who'd been married for years. I quietly asked her about her wedding night. She smiled at me with this knowing look, like she could see exactly where I was, even though I had no idea what was coming. Then she said something I'll never forget. Don't worry too much. What matters most is whether you feel loved. If you do, everything else will fall into place. But how could I know if the man I was marrying truly loved me when we'd only spoken 3 times? I used to imagine love as soft candlelight, gentle kisses, and holding hands under the stars. But as the wedding day approached, those images slowly faded, replaced by questions. Would he understand me? Would he wait? Would he pressure me? I didn't dare ask anyone. Not my mom. Not my sister. Not even my best friend. In a town like Maplewood, topics like this were often off limits. But fear doesn't go away just because you hide it. It grows. It builds up quietly. I smiled at the engagement parties, shook hands with relatives, and wore nice dresses. But inside, I was terrified. I kept thinking, maybe I'm just overthinking. But each night as the big day came closer, that fear felt more real, more heavy, more present than ever. I started noticing every little detail, how he looked at me, how he talked to others, how short and formal his messages were. He was polite, respectful, but distant. We were strangers about to become husband and wife in front of hundreds of people. And I, the girl with soft hopes and fragile dreams, was walking into the biggest moment of her life completely unsure. The night before the wedding, I sat alone by the window. The sky outside was dusky, and a soft wind blew through the trees. I closed my eyes and tried to picture what tomorrow night would be like. But I couldn't. My mind was spinning. I saw myself sitting alone in a room I didn't recognize, with a man I barely knew. I imagined a bed covered in red roses. I imagined the door closing, just me and him. Do you know what it feels like to be scared but have no one to talk to? It's like holding your breath underwater too long. Everyone else was laughing, decorating, preparing, and I was silently carrying this weight in my chest. I was afraid that if I said something, people would think I was silly. I was afraid that if I spoke up, I'd ruin the perfect image everyone expected. Most of all, I was afraid that this fear was something I had to endure alone. At one point, I even thought, maybe I'll just pretend. Just let it happen and forget about it later. But then I asked myself, if this is supposed to be the first night of our marriage, why should it begin with pretending? I wanted to be understood. I wanted to be heard. I wanted someone to look me in the eyes and ask, "Are you scared?" And if I nodded, they wouldn't ignore it. They would sit beside me, hold my hand, and say, "It's okay, I'm here." But all of that was just hope. Reality? I didn't know what it would be. Maybe he'd surprise me. Maybe he wouldn't be like what I feared. But I also knew, if he wasn't gentle, if he wasn't patient, if he treated that night like an obligation, then my heart, for the first time in my life, would break. And that was what I feared the most. The wedding day and the moment of leaving my parents, that's a chapter no girl forgets. And for me, it was both dazzling and deeply emotional. My wedding day arrived faster than I expected. Everything felt like a dream. The flowers, the white dress, the soft music echoing through the joyful space. I walked between rows of family and friends in a sea of smiles, laughter, cameras, and blessings. Everyone said I looked like a princess from a fairy tale. I smiled. I waved, I thanked every guest, but deep inside I was counting the seconds because I knew a moment was coming, the one I had always feared, the moment I'd have to leave my parents. On the surface, it sounds ordinary, just another step in a girl's life. But for a daughter who grew up wrapped in her parents' love, it was anything but simple. The closer it came, the heavier my heart grew. Amid the cheerful noise, I caught sight of my mother standing quietly in a corner. She didn't say a word, just looked at me with tender eyes, full of pride and sadness. My father stood strong beside her, trying to be tough as always, but I could see the red rims in his eyes. He didn't cry, but the way his hands clenched and the silence in his face told me he was holding back a storm of emotion. Then the moment truly came. The wedding car pulled up to the front gate. People started gently urging me to head out. I walked over to my mother and fell into her arms, crying like a child. Her familiar scent, a soft perfume, the warmth of worn fabric, overwhelmed me. I buried my face into her shoulder. She stroked my hair and whispered, "Go on, sweetheart. I trust you'll be happy." Her words sliced through me, gentle but deep. I had never lived away from my parents, never slept in a place without my mom's soft hallway footsteps, never started a day without my dad's morning coffee aroma. But now I was stepping into a new life, into a home that wasn't mine yet, beside a man I didn't fully know, a man who would soon be called my husband. When I approached my father, he said nothing, just pulled me into a tight hug. His embrace felt like a shield I had leaned on my whole life. When he let go, he placed a small, worn handkerchief in my hand, one I'd seen him carry on every long trip. He said quietly, "Keep it. When you miss home, hold it." His voice was low and calm, but warm enough to melt me. I got into the wedding car, and as the door closed, the world outside felt like it paused. The car slowly rolled forward. I turned my head to look through the window. My mother stood there, her hands gently raised in a wave. My father stood next to her, one hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Both of them watched me with an expression I couldn't quite name, part love, part worry, part pride. They grew smaller and blurrier until only the blue sky and the road ahead remained. That was when the tears finally came. Quiet, without sobs. No words, just a steady stream of tears sliding down my cheeks, carrying with them all the feelings I had held in for so long. I didn't cry because I was sad. I cried because I had just closed a door behind me, the door to my childhood, the door to mornings filled with my parents' laughter. And I was stepping into another one, the door to married life, to an unknown future. People often say getting married is starting a new journey, but no one tells you that this journey begins with a goodbye. I had climbed into the bridal car. I had smiled. I had posed for pictures. I had received blessings. But my heart, the heart of a girl leaving home for the first time, was still back in that kitchen, in my mother's eyes, in my father's arms, and in the mornings I would never live again. Entering the new home, I was welcomed by my husband's family with kindness and warmth. Everyone smiled at me, offering their best wishes and sweet words. My mother-in-law led me inside and gently told me to consider this my own home. His sisters chatted excitedly, complimenting me for being gentle and graceful. The atmosphere was warm and sincere, but my heart was not at peace. I smiled politely at everyone, nodding gently, responding with all the grace I could. But behind that smile, my hands were ice cold, my lips dry, and my body trembling. Every step inside that house felt like walking into the unknown. Everyone was kind, yes, but I still felt like a stranger, a guest in someone else's world, carrying a storm of worry in my chest. The house didn't smell like the soft laundry scent my mom used. There were no footsteps in the hallway like hers, no familiar voice reminding me to eat, no warm tea waiting in the kitchen. Everything was different. So different that the moment I entered, I already missed home terribly. I kept telling myself, it's okay. Everything will be fine. But the voice inside me was small, too weak to calm the fear building up inside. They led me into a new bedroom, the one that from now on would be where I wake up and fall asleep every day. The room was beautifully decorated, with red roses on the bed, golden lights, and the gentle scent of perfume in the air. Everyone said it looked romantic and sweet, but to me, it felt unfamiliar. Beautiful, yes, but it didn't ease the weight in my heart. I sat at the edge of the bed, hands clasped tightly together. I lowered my eyes, barely looking around. There was a feeling I couldn't name, part anxiety, part fear. I didn't know what would happen once the door closed, when it was just me and him. I could hear my own heartbeat, fast and loud, like a drum before a coming storm. Outside, the footsteps slowly faded. The house quieted. Then came a knock at the door. Soft, slow. The door creaked open. I didn't have to look. I knew it was him. The man I had just married a few hours earlier. The man I had spoken to only a few times before. Someone who was both familiar and still a stranger to me. I didn't lift my head. I sat still, hands clenched. I tried to smile when I heard him step inside, but my face was stiff, the smile forced. He quietly closed the door behind him. Now it was just the two of us. Silence. Tension. The space between us, only a few steps, suddenly felt like an ocean. He walked over, but he didn't sit close. He left a small space between us, enough to give me room to breathe. I felt my breath quicken. My hands were freezing. My heart raced with questions I couldn't speak out loud. Would he try something? Would he understand how scared I was? Would I have the strength to say no if I needed to? Then, in that heavy silence, he spoke. Softly, gently. I know you're nervous. I won't force anything. Tonight, I just want you to feel safe. His words were like a breeze through a suffocating room, gentle but powerful enough to loosen the tight knot in my chest. For the first time that day, I took a deep breath. Not because the fear was gone, but because a small spark of hope had appeared in my heart. The first moments in the wedding room felt like time had slowed down. One of my husband's relatives gently brought me in and quietly closed the door behind me. The room glowed with warm golden light, creating a cozy and private space. On the bed, red rose petals were scattered beautifully. It looked like a dream. But my heart wasn't dreaming. It was pounding wildly inside my chest, like it wanted to escape my own body. I sat quietly at the edge of the bed, hands clenched tightly in my lap. My eyes stayed down, not daring to look up, even though I was alone. The room was so silent I could hear every short, shallow breath I took. No one had said a word. No one touched me, but the fear came from within, from all the unknowns, from the stories my imagination had spun over the years. I thought about the hundreds of stories I had heard from friends, cousins, and social media about wedding nights. Some described them as sweet and romantic. Others said it was painful, disappointing, even cold. And now I was sitting in my own story, not knowing which way it would go. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the trembling in my hands. Then came footsteps outside the door. My heart skipped a beat. I squeezed my hands tighter, my lips dry, but I tried to hold on to a faint smile. The door opened. There was no loud noise, just a soft click. I didn't have to look. I knew it was him. Ryan, the man who had become my husband less than a day ago. He entered the room gently, without rushing, without sound. He quietly closed the door and paused for a few seconds, as if reading the energy in the room. I still hadn't lifted my head, but I could feel him getting closer. My heart began to race again. Inside me, a part wanted to run, while another part hoped he would understand, that I was scared, confused, and quietly wishing for someone to hold that fear with care. He didn't sit too close. He simply sat beside me, leaving enough space to let me breathe. The silence between us didn't feel heavy. It felt like a shared breath slowly reaching each other. I still hadn't spoken, but then he broke the silence, his voice low and warm, like a cup of cocoa on a cold night. "Emma, you don't have to be afraid. I know tonight might be really hard." That voice, not overly sweet, not dramatic, just real and kind. It made me look up. For the first time, I raised my head and truly saw the face of this man. He was smiling, not with expectation, not with pressure, just enough to let me know he was here, and I wasn't alone. And in that moment, something inside me began to soften. Ryan didn't rush anything. He simply sat down gently, keeping a respectful distance. It wasn't far, but enough for me to feel no pressure. He didn't speak right away. He sat in silence for a moment, as if giving me space to breathe after such a long and emotional day. And then, in a warm voice as soft as winter air, he began to speak. He said he knew I was afraid, that he could see the confusion in my eyes and the trembling in my hands. He said we didn't have to do anything tonight, that we could just sit here and talk for a while. All he wanted was for me to feel safe, to feel heard, and that was enough. I didn't expect him to say that. Something so simple, yet in that moment, it felt like a candle being lit in a cold, dark room. I looked at him. His eyes were gentle, not demanding, not expectant. Just the gaze of someone trying to say, "I'm here with you. You're not alone in how you feel." His voice continued, soft like a breeze in early summer. He told me he was nervous too, that he didn't know how to begin either, that he wasn't perfect, but he wanted to be someone who made me feel safe. Then he gave a shy smile and said, "I didn't think I'd be this nervous walking into this room." That made me laugh just a little. but enough to warm the air between us. It was the first time I felt my heartbeat slow down. The first time since leaving home that I didn't feel so alone. Not because someone held me tightly, but because someone had the patience to sit beside me, without touching, without forcing, simply being there with kindness and understanding. That gentle presence felt like a soft blanket covering my fear. Light, but steady. Ryan quietly stood up and poured me a glass of water. He brought it to me with such care and gentleness, as if afraid to startle me. As I reached out to take it, our fingers brushed lightly. Just a small touch, but it made my heart skip a beat. That touch wasn't passionate, but gentle, honest and delicate in a way I hadn't expected. I instinctively pulled my hand back, feeling my cheeks grow warm with a blush I couldn't explain. He just smiled, a calm, unteasing smile without pressure or expectation. Then, half jokingly, he said, "You don't need to be scared. I promise I don't bite." That one sentence made me laugh. A quiet, hesitant laugh, but enough to open a small door in the tightness around my chest. The air in the room began to feel lighter. He started telling me little stories about himself. Clumsy, silly moments like the time he spilled orange juice on his shirt during a meeting, or how nervous he was the first time he visited my family. These simple stories, though ordinary, gave me room to breathe. They made him feel human. Not distant, not perfect. What surprised me most was when he admitted he was nervous too. He said he was afraid of doing something that might make me uncomfortable. He didn't know what to say, or what to do, or even where exactly to sit. I had always thought girls were the ones carrying quiet fears on their wedding night, but now I realized fear was something we both shared. In that moment, I looked at him with new eyes, no longer with caution, but with quiet understanding. He didn't feel like a stranger anymore. He felt closer, more real. And his honesty, the simple stories he shared, and his gentle gestures, all of them slowly broke down the wall of awkwardness I had built around myself. After a while of talking, the atmosphere in the room became more relaxed. I no longer clenched my hands tightly like before, though I hadn't completely loosened up. Then Ryan turned to me, his gaze both gentle and sincere. He asked a simple question that made my heart pause for a moment. He asked if he could hold my hand. I nodded slowly, not too fast, but certain. He reached out, not in a rush, not forcefully. When his hand touched mine, I could feel his warmth transfer to me. That touch was as soft as a morning breeze, yet it carried the weight of sincerity. There was no sense of control, only respect. His hand was bigger than mine, but not rough. On the contrary, it held a warmth that surprised me. He didn't grip tightly, just held it gently, like he was holding something precious. I looked down at our hands, now joined together, and felt like I had stepped into another world. A place without pressure, without fear, only the beginning of trust. I looked up at him. Ryan was smiling. That smile wasn't trying to cheer me up. It was simply the calm presence of someone who wanted me to know I was safe. In that touch, I could feel his patience. Not someone trying to take something too quickly, but someone willing to wait until I truly felt comfortable. My emotions began to shift. From fear and anxiety, I now felt an indescribable peace. My heart still beat fast, but not from panic. It was from something warm spreading through me. A hand held, a small question, a quiet yes. And from that moment, I knew I had crossed an invisible line. From distance to closeness, from hesitation to trust. Our first night wasn't like what you often see on social media or in the movies. There was no rushing, no dramatic moment. We simply lay next to each other, quiet for a long while. He wrapped his arms around me, and I rested my head on his chest. In that stillness, I could hear his heartbeat, steady, strong, and very real. His hand gently stroked my arm, each movement slow and careful, as if he were afraid to disturb something fragile within me. There were no loud words, just soft whispers like a quiet stream flowing through my heart. He didn't ask for anything, didn't expect anything. Every touch carried respect and a surprising tenderness. Slowly, my tense body began to relax with the rhythm of his breath. I had never been touched like that before, not in a rushed way filled with desire, but in a way that made me feel cherished. He didn't need to say I love you because his actions spoke louder. The way he smoothed my hair, held me gently, and stayed silent just to let me feel safe. All of it made me believe I was truly protected. And then when all the fear inside me had nearly melted away, he leaned in and kissed me. No warning, no drama. It wasn't a perfect kiss, and it didn't look like the ones I had imagined. But it was real, gentle, and enough to make me close my eyes with complete trust. I didn't pull away. I didn't have to pretend to be strong. I was ready, not because I was convinced, but because I was loved. We didn't try to become the perfect couple in one night. We were just two human beings learning how to understand one another, reaching for each other with kindness and honesty. And that closeness, without pressure, without performance, turned my first night into one of the gentlest memories of my life. A night I remember not for what happened, but for how deeply I felt respected and valued. If you're a girl who's feeling nervous about your first night, let me tell you this from the bottom of my heart. That night belongs to you. It is your moment, a moment where your heart, your body, and your emotions deserve to be heard, not pressured. You don't have to be like anyone else. You don't need to be perfect. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. Let it be about comfort, not fear. Let it be about trust, not expectation. You have the right to be nervous. You have the right to say no. You have the right to honor your own emotions. Don't let fear from other people's stories take away the beauty of what could be your unique experience. The first night is not a test. It's a quiet, meaningful step in the journey of two hearts learning to love one another with honesty, without pretending, without performing. And if you're a man listening to this, please listen with your heart. She may not say it, but she might be scared. She might be overwhelmed, and she needs to be touched, not just by your hands, but by your kindness. As a man, your gentleness does not make you weak. It makes you strong in the most beautiful way. Don't rush. Don't demand. Don't believe that love begins with passion. Real love begins when a woman feels safe in your arms. Let her feel seen. Let her feel heard. Let her feel free to choose. When you do that, you're not just touching her body. You're touching her soul. And that is where love begins to grow, to bloom, and to stay. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like, leave a comment to share how you feel, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because here we don't just learn a language, we learn how to love with honesty and heart.